Hey guys, Westy on the mic here.
All right, everyone, thanks for checking out this video. It's a bit of a new one for me. Having to battle a little bit of imposter syndrome, doing a little bit of an instructional video, but I'm going to do the best I can. I've had several people ask me what PowerPoints, what aim points I use for my throw-ins. So decided it was about time I try to make one of those. And bear with me as I am doing this on my PC, not on my phone. So I'm a little bit slower than I normally am, but that might even help the video too. So the first one to notice is anything under 80, I don't put a whole lot of thought into. I know that the top of that first Wi-Fi band, that top Wi-Fi band, is about 80 feet for me, sometimes 85 if I think there's a little bit of elevation in play. So on these first couple, that's what I'm lining it up with. That first one, it was 80 feet exactly, I think. So I lined it up right with the top of that Wi-Fi band. And just to note, I use the thin Wi-Fi bands. I just feel better with those, so that's what I go with. Here's 78 again. You can see right at the top of that top band, and I'm in. And you players do a lot of different things. Everyone has their own preference as far as where they line up the chevrons at the basket. If I can, I'm trying to keep the default aim, whatever it gives me. Generally, it's in a pretty similar spot. Um, I like to keep that bottom chevron near the bottom of the basket. So right where the cage is, you can see the bottom of that bottom arrow is about where the top of the cage is. So that's where I'm aiming at. This one's 88 feet, so I move the chevron into that top line. Ugly spit out there, but hey, it gives us another shot from 88 feet. So this is a time to get a spit out. And notice when you're practicing these, sometimes when you do a replay, it'll bring you to a slightly different aim point. So that's worth noticing if you're trying to drill something in. We made the most of our second attempt, and we'll give it another go here. The purpose of this, or what I'm doing, is I'm trying to just kind of go 5 to 10 feet further back each time. You can practice these throw-ins kind of anywhere. There's a putting practice mode in the app, and you can do that. It is helpful. It has some glitches, and it's not perfect, but it can be fun to do, and it keeps getting longer and longer, and it's a good place to test. So here we go, 96. To me, this is right at the bottom of that first Wi-Fi band. You can see the top of my disc lining up right at the bottom of that, and that's about perfect. I'm kind of aiming for the bottom third of the chains, is that's pretty much impossible to give you a spit out there. Generally, if you're going to miss, it's when you hit it a little bit higher. And you can see I am going and restarting some of these just for the purpose of consistency. Anytime I'm seeing a two wind, I'm going and starting over just because I want to keep all of these as comparable as possible. I know that the winds are different from time to time still, like a one headwind, compared to a one tailwind, it's, two winds different. So there is that to keep that in mind. But in general, I'm trying to minimize that change as much as possible. And here we got 107 feet, so I'm probably giving a little too much, but we know that 95 to 100 is right at the bottom of that band, so I'm giving it up a little bit, and I moved it a little bit too far, or gave it a little too much anhyzer, but wasn't enough to miss it. And again, yeah, I'm just going to kind of keep moving up about 5 to 10 feet at a time if I can help it, and hopefully this helps you out. Let's see. So yeah, another one wind. Let's see if there's any other pointers that I'm thinking of. And this again, this is the accurate windbreak hope. If you're using these as kind of a guide, the accurate sticky hope would be about the same thing, and the accurate extra glide pure is pretty similar. There's a little bit more fade on it, and the power is slightly different. So you're going to want to dial these in on your own. Now here's 117 feet, moving down a little bit more from what I was the last time. I sneak it over the rim, and that is that. We'll go through it again. So I'm trying to think of what else you might want to know here. You've probably seen me go forehand on some of my throw-ins, and I will do a future video explaining when and why I generally do that. It often comes down to the length of it. Like if it gets longer, I often go to my forehand, or if it's, if it's kind of a weird elevation thing, maybe like a uphill one, I might go to my forehand. If it's right at the edge of my range, so I know that with this disc, the edge of my range is about 185 to 195 feet with the forehand, then I just know I can dial that in and I give it full power. And that's typically when you'll see me go with that forehand. Or if there's just one that I need to fade to the right at the end to avoid danger. All right, just trying to go a little bit further and further with each one of these. And yep, just trying to, you know, let you kind of see all the different distances I throw at. 134 here. And you can note I'm moving these up a little bit. The further out you go, the more the default aim can be a little bit off. So I'm just moving that bottom arrow to line up at the top of the cage. And 130 to 135 is directly in the middle of those top two Wi-Fi bands for me. So that's something to note for sure. Anything longer than 135, and I'm thinking it's a little bit, when I'm aiming the top of my disc, it's a little bit closer to that second band than it is to the first band. One more thing I feel like I should probably point out, and I'm sorry, I'm feeling like I'm a little scrambled on these tips, but one thing I feel like I should point out too is I do go by feel a lot. So it's important to know these baseline distances, it really is. But the elevation change is crucial, and on most courses, it's on every hole. So on Sunshine Glade, where we're practicing here, and that's what makes it a perfect practice, is I don't have to deal with the elevation change, and if there is some, it's very, very minimal. And just wanted to point out there, I was 143, so the top of my disc was a little closer to that second Wi-Fi band. But yeah, so if there's elevation that comes into play, you will need to change things up a little bit. I do plan to have a future throw-in video as well that shows some of the adjustments I make to elevation, just in general, and then also probably in some specific holes. Like Grizzly Gulch 3 is an uphill one that comes to mind, and Northern Lights 1 is a downhill one that comes to mind, where I'm going to want to point out some of the adjustments that I make there just to deal with the severe elevation. So here we got 147. When I get to about 150 or so and believe me, I mean I miss plenty from 80 to 140. I do, but when I get to 150 or so, it's where I start to feel like this is getting a little bit harder. Even if I think I have my distance nailed down, I expect to miss to the left, to the right, high or low sometimes, and that's okay. Like no one is perfect from that range. All right, so here I'm going to try to give myself a little bit of a longer one. 157, this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky for me, and we'll see if I can make any of these. And the further out you go, the more you might need to adjust that default aim to get it to where you want it to. So in my mind, 160, excuse me, to 165 is about the top of that second band, and they're out there a little bit deep. So 157, I gave it close to two bands of power there. And again, this is just a really tricky zone, especially when you're doing replays here. It's, you're going to see me miss a few of these, but this is no gimme range for anyone. At least I'd be surprised if it is. There are players who are better at it than me, but it's just you're going to miss some of these. All right, so I'll give it a couple more tries. I promise I do make this one eventually, but I'm just kind of showing you there is more wobble here. It's like the more power you give it, the longer it is, the more you can see the disc shake and the Wi-Fi bands move a little bit, and that's just part of what makes it a little bit more difficult the further out you go. And one of the reasons why you'll experience yourself missing more of those than you make just the further you go out. Anyway, we'll give it, I think, one more shot here and see how that goes. Then we're going to wrap it up. And yeah, just one more note. I like to use a non-glide putter just because I feel like that gives it a little bit less of a variable as far as wind and just movement. The windbreak, I don't know how much it actually does compared to the sticky version of the disc. And there we go. Finally made it. You're like, man, when is this guy ever going to make this? But yeah, you're gonna have to figure out what works for you, what's best, which disc, etc. Everyone has different preferences when it comes to putting, but just figure out something that works for you and let me know if you have any tips for me, as I'm always looking to get better too. Anyway, if you like this video, please like and subscribe and let me know which things you'd like to see tutorial videos on in the future. Thanks for watching.